Welcome, everybody. It's Tuesday evening. It's time for another edition of Read, Write, Local, Unbound, the show where we talk to authors. They talk to us. They tell us about writing, reading, and how you can do it too. Tonight is a rather special edition of the program because they're not just writers who are visiting us, they are poets. And so I have invited kind of the poet host this evening, Mr. John Burroughs, who has published a number of works, has been also crowned the Poet Laureate of Ohio. And I've seen he's done stuff at our library, I know, many, many years ago, and been to some of the Read Write Local book fair events too. So with that, John, welcome to our program.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. Avon Lake Library has been one of my favorite libraries since I was a child, and Mom used to take us down Route 83 to Lake Erie to swim, and we'd stop at the library on our way to or from. I'm thrilled to be here tonight with some friends who I adore, and wow, this is cool.
Yes. And we're going to get to your friends soon enough. But first, we're going to talk about you. First, we're going to find out more about where you come from as far as reading and writing. And that could be what you read as a kid or later on, and how you really got into this world of poetry.
Well, I began writing poetry in the junior high school to impress a teacher. I had submitted an essay. She said, "Oh, wow, this is so poetic. Have you written any other poetry?" And I lied and told her yes. And then I had to start writing something. So for many years, I just wrote, pretty much for my own therapy or whatever, for my own closet boxes. And then not until I was almost 40 years old did I, through social media, MySpace, meet some interesting poets from the area that were like my kindred, my poet family that I didn't know existed. I didn't realize there were living poets doing this. And I got convinced. Yeah, I see one of them here right now. Steve Goldberg just entered. Hi, Steve. And these folks invited me to poetry readings, encouraged me, and I took off from there. And now it's become kind of my life.
Let's back up again a bit to when you were young. What sort of things did you like to read when you were young?
Well, the encyclopedia was the first thing. Mom bought a set of encyclopedia for us when I was about in first grade. And I didn't understand half of what I was reading, but, I just really loved exploring all these different things. And then fiction like Beverly Cleary, novels, The Mouse and the Motorcycle was my favorite as a little kid. Then later in teenage years, things like Herman Hesse, Siddhartha.
The heavy stuff.
A wide variety, yeah. Things about journeying. Well, my life has felt like a journey in many ways.
So after high school and stuff, where did your journey take you, John?
Well, it took me in a lot of different places. I went to college at Lorain County Community College, got a degree in history. I worked as a manager of a bar in Lorain, got in some trouble with the law and ended up going to jail for a little while. And then fortunately, I found I had a supportive family, community, friends, wife, and who helped me along when I was, when things weren't so good. And by my 30s, 40s, life was looking up. And then I found my poetry community. So
and everything just kept getting better.
That's kind of like in a nutshell.
Well, it's good you had people who supported you and cared about you through some obviously rough times. And I think we all need that. But I think sometimes it toughens some people up to things that they didn't think they could handle. Sometimes now they realize they can.
That's true.
So anyway, the poets, you found them. you started doing, you said, stuff on MySpace and things, which was taking me way back here. And so what did you just like post poems on MySpace, or did you how do you share them with each other?
Well, I started out just blogging about random things. I
Mhm.
joined MySpace only because my nephew and some other family members were there and sharing photos, and the only way I could see their photos was to join MySpace.
Mhm.
And then I started blogging just about things in my life, ranting about this or that, or making little jokes. And at some point, I was had a dearth of blog material, and I decided, well, let me put one of my poems that I was kind of really afraid to share with the world out there. And I
Mhm.
put that on my blog, and it got really good feedback, and I got a lot of encouragement. We want to see more poems. So kind of like what had happened in junior high school with the teacher, I started sharing more poems, for
Mhm.
better or worse. And yeah.
So the poems were being shared. And I just remember MySpace as being a very popular for bands. It's kind of what you had to be in music to be understood, and then that all kind of got swept aside. But back in the day, it was all about the bands.
Yeah. And I posted some songs on there too,
Mhm.
but and intended to do more of it, but then the poetry kind of took me away.
Mhm. Mhm. So how does it go from there to doing like the live poetry, the poetry slams, published works, chapbooks, things like that? How does that all come about from this?
Well, it kind of came about pretty quickly after I went to my first poetry reading. I was very hesitant to get up and share. I was kind of a bashful person, but after a few beers, the host, who knew me from MySpace, Ray McNeese, coaxed me on up, and being a little intoxicated, I said, "What the hell? I don't ever have to see these people again. If they laugh at
Little
me."
do you
And
know.
yeah, I got good feedback, so I kept coming back, trying to find as many open mics as I
Mhm.
could, and then it snowballed.
Yes. So then, like I said, you're putting stuff on paper eventually. Like I said, there's a whole thing, and you've published so much stuff in the in between. So tell us a little bit about the journey of going from a live poet, or internet poet, to a published poet, and some of the adventures along the way.
Well, when I first started out going to poetry readings, I didn't have a book. I'd had a few poems published here and there in small journals, but people would ask me, "Hey, do you have a book? I'd like to, read that on the page." And so I assembled my own little handmade chapbook,
Mhm.
stapled it, and started, giving them away at readings or selling them if I could find somebody willing to pay for it.
Mhm.
And from there, I printed up one for my friend, who was a great poet from my hometown of Elyria, where I was living at the time. And then I people started sending me manuscripts, saying, "Hey, publish one for me." I started publishing people from across the country, and eventually it evolved into doing real perfect bound, real, I use in quotation marks, books, because I think the staple ones are books too, but and and then reading all around Cleveland led to, invitations to go other places.
Mhm.
uh, Diane Borsinek and I decided to host our own poetry series, which we kind of learned as we went. We started out, that evolved into doing a Snow Tree Word Fest, which we were for a while doing every year, where we would invite poets from all over different states to come and read in one big marathon.
Mhm.
um, one year we did a 150-hour poetry marathon at Jim's Coffee House in Elyria. And,
That's
the
150
more
straight
people you
hours.
connect with,
It's 150
150.
hours continuously, no breaks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was somebody reading all night, or,
Mhm.
I tried to stay up for the whole time, but by day 4, I fell asleep on the couch. But
Understandable. So I guess from what you're telling me, you're not just getting your stuff published, you're publishing other people. They're reaching out to you, you're helping them get their stuff out there to a wider audience. that's kind of
Hmm.
your role uh, as well as organizing these things and finding people, finding each other, finding your audience. So have you published a lot of these things, like you said, in the Perfect Bound or whatever it is edition to, how many of these things have you published for people?
We have published, well, I say we, it's mostly me, but
Mhm.
I've published over 112 titles
Okay.
by people all over. The most recent is by Carolyn Strigley Moore
Mhm.
from New York, and it's a poem about her work in dog shelters, and all the poems are about that and the story she's gone through. But really, quite a variety of things we've published over the years.
Mhm. Well, that's just amazing that we're able to kind of stumble into this world and really make it your own. So, what does it mean to be the Beat Poet Laureate of Ohio, and how did that come about? And how do you get into that role?
Well, I had started reading all over, like I said, and after my wife passed away in 2017, um, partly for therapy or just to get out of the house because I couldn't bear to be in the house without her, I started doing a lot more traveling further afield. And one of the places I read was in Connecticut for the people who ran the event happened to also run the National Beat Poetry Foundation.
Mhm.
So I met them and made that connection. And then within a couple of years after that reading, they selected me. They're aiming to select a Beat Poet Laureate for each state. So
Okay.
I don't think they have all 50 states yet, but they're working on it.
Well, excellent.
So yeah,
All
it's
right.
just luck of the draw, because
Luck of
there
the
are a lot
draw.
of really worthy candidates.
Certainly, certainly, including several in this room, I'm sure. Yes. So anyway, I was wondering if you could at this point read something for us.
Oh, sure. I will.
Okay.
This is a poem I wrote. Close the door, so the dog's barking there. Um, I wrote this poem after David Berman passed away. He was a poet and also the front man songwriter for a band called the Silver Jews.
Oh yeah.
And he committed suicide in the summer of 2019. And one of his most famous songs was entitled Random Rules. That is also the title of this poem. Random Rules. There is nothing worse or better than Purple Mountain's majesty or a Purple Mountain's tragedy. In 1984, I was traumatized by entering the Marine Corps and refusing to serve. It made me servile, temper, lie. Don't let your parents make you value killing over communism. In the Gulag, I wanted to be David Berman when I grew up, though I had not yet heard of him. By the time he shot himself, I had changed my mind. If there is a point to this life, I am still outlining it. Find the patterns. Fully embrace multidimensionality, whether or not it is plain to see. Don't let your parents make you value religion over reality. What you thought was a tragedy probably was. You can still find value in it, like religion. Semper Fidelis. In 1984, I fell in love with Purple Rain, and Laura Lynn fell out of love with me. Don't let your pastor convince you to break up with your Catholic crush. This poem has nothing and everything to do with its inspiration, like responses to a Rorschach test. Purple robes cannot confer holiness, though art can allude to them, and art is always holy. Imbibe life, hold on, let go. Embrace more than one medium. See life as an hallucination, with or without drugs. Realize the hallucination is real. In 1984, I was ill or well, depending on who you ask and when. Perhaps I still am. There is no other. Be friends and strangers with yourself simultaneously. American water will make you both.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
So this is, again, this is about, you didn't know Berman, but you probably should have, and you would have wanted to be him except for the end. All right.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, I'm familiar with the Silver Jews as well, so that was a very sad day. Hold on, something happened here. That's Microsoft, a browser popping up when you don't want one. Anyway.
You like my dog barking.
It's what happens in this thing when it's live, sort of live Zoom. All right. I guess like you said, you've brought some, there's a lot of poets here tonight, but you have two you've specifically invited to talk a bit about what they do. So why don't you introduce them one at a time? Who's first?
Okay, which one of you wants to be first? Shelley or Doc? Okay, well, Shelley, since you're next to me on the screen and Doc's after you, that's the order we'll go in.
Could volunteer or be volunteered, right?
So Shelley Chernin is the author of The Vigil, a book I published in 2011 for her. And she's had work published in lots of different places. She's won awards. She's a ukulele player, a legal reference book writer, and anything else you want to tell about yourself, feel free. Shelley Chernin.
Yes, thank you. Shelley, tell us more about yourself.
Yes. Well, John pretty much covered, well, I guess the one thing John didn't cover. So my writing life has not been as active over the last 5 or 6 years because I've gotten very involved in environmental work. I lived for the last 10 years out in Geauga County and have been very involved in Geauga County parks, and I still am, even though I've now moved to South Euclid, where we all seem to live now. So that's the piece that's been missing, and because I've been putting so much time into the environmental work, I've been putting less time into the writing. But that's been the story of my writing life, is that I've done it in, intensely at times in my life, and then set it down for years at a time when it didn't suit me. So sometimes I'll write for a number of years, and it's the main focus of what I do, and then for years I'll find other things to occupy me. I don't know if that's typical or not, but that's the way my life has gone.
So when you were younger, because I like to always ask people this, what are some of the books or things you like to read that maybe led you in the direction you are today?
Oh gosh, I read everything when I was young. I probably not so much poetry, although I remember John Ciardi, who mostly wrote adult poetry, wrote a number of excellent children's books that I adored, and I read those. But other than that, I read a lot of fiction. As a young child, for some reason, I wanted to read everything ever written about horses, dogs, animals, and I read sports books like crazy: baseball, football. I think I was a tomboy at the time, and but really, I read my way through the entire elementary school library, I think. And my mom was a voracious reader, mostly of modern fiction. So as I got into my teens, she steered me toward the modern fiction of the day, which we're talking about the
You don't want to date yourself.
He's
It's
in
okay.
70s here, late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
And in school, then I read a lot of the classics.
Mhm.
So went to college, majored in English with a specialization in fiction writing. So at that point, my life was writing much more fiction than poetry.
So you were writing fiction for for publication, for your own interest, for
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just going to turn the volume up here. Pretty much for for my own interest for school. I wasn't publishing, nor was I really looking to be published at that point. I went right from undergraduate school to law school, and then I got all caught up in law school and career and family and children, and didn't get back to writing until at some point, when my kids were fairly young, and I really needed something outside the family. Poetry is what popped up for me. I think because I could write in shorter periods of time. Fiction would have required a lot more intense time to really stick with a longer piece. And so shorter pieces, poetry, were when I started writing, and I started taking workshops. And that's when I got going on poetry.
Is that the workshops and other ways that you met other poets such as this gang, or was it on MySpace as well, or what's the deal with that?
I was never on MySpace. Yeah, I don't think I knew anything about MySpace. I was busy raising kids. So yeah, I started out. The workshops got me in touch with a group of poets, most of whom didn't really read out much. We had our little workshop. This was through Case Western Reserve Continuing Education. And so this little group just met once a week. But through that group and the
We're having a bit of connection issues, I think, here, Shelley, but that's okay.
person who led that group, I'm sorry, what?
We had a few connection issues. I think I lost a few sentences there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where you lost me, but yeah, I started going to some poetry readings in the evening. Actually, Steve Goldberg's here. He hosted a reading that I went to a number of times, and I started to meet people there. And then I joined another workshop, Cleveland Poetry Salon, which is actually where I met John and a number of other poets, and really started to get more active in the poetry scene.
So how much of your poetry do you think is influenced by others versus things that just come into your own head or from your own experience?
Oh, I think my poetry.
I'm sorry, I put you on the spot, didn't I? I'm sorry.
I view it. I view my poetry as dividing into kind of two basic types. And so one is, tends to come from very deep inside of me. That's that's the poetry that I write that many people consider difficult, I think. And it probably translates better on paper. And then, I also write topical things sometimes that are, is a little simpler, easier to follow. And I write songs for ukulele. Those tend to be topical.
Yes.
So I do both.
So when you do ukulele, do you play solely or do you join some of these large orchestras they understand exist occasionally?
So mostly I've played on my own, but I've never joined an orchestra, but there's a group that I used to go to at the Cleveland Heights Library. I haven't gone in a long time, but we just sit in a circle and play. Uke players are the one kind of musician. Basically nobody has an ego and everybody's welcoming. It doesn't matter if it's the first time you've ever played or if you're an expert musician who's been playing the uke for years. Everybody welcomes everybody else and everybody's happy to sit in a circle and play together.
Yes, it's a very fun thing to do. Just confronting a lot of friends who participate. So I guess the next thing, Shelley, is do you have anything you'd like to read and share with us?
Sure, be happy
Okay,
to.
your choice. Tell us what you got there and then let her rip.
Let's see. Okay. Okay. I need my glasses off there. This poem is called The Proofs of Love. It's in 3 parts. The first part is called Infinite Regress. On the 3rd night we spent together, a tortoise moon dug her nesting burrow in the firmament. Although she covered her clutch with dirty sky, Sirius ate the eggs as we watched their mother's luminant carapace trudge toward morning. We know so little of nature. Our survival depended upon darkness, so we did not grieve the loss of moonlets. We thanked our lucky stars for the hungers that shielded us. At dawn, it rained oracle bones inscribed with hindsight. The ancient script was faultless. Nothing was remembered. 2. Circular argument. We are indistinguishable our first winter, reflective. Squamata hibernate in underground dens. Snow effaces some tracks, records others. Our indentations glint missives to illiterate clouds that squall their response. Illegible blizzard. Trapped between slices of wonder, we find each other's eyes in an ice blink. Use this trick of polar light to braze ourselves together, but we are embrittled and startle at the noise of copperheads rustling below. We know the danger of mirrors without smoke. The icicles above us drip snake spit. 3. Dogmatic stopping point. We have never spent a single night together, let alone 3. We speak in trilemmas, share reptilian moons, hope a hatchling sun rises in the west. Enlightenment alive by heliacal reversal. We will, our 5-line skink will pull herself out of the swampy horizon by her own tail and leave it twitching azure into the sky. Snakes, lockjawed, will break off the search for prey. Appendages regenerate, and so we will communicate with colors. Terre verte will green the umber. Spring will come.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess would I be not presuming, but nosy. Where does this poem come from? Deep inside you somewhere? Is this like as a magic realist dream or something, or what is it?
So, you asked about poems that come from inside. That comes from inside. It actually comes from real life experience, believe it or not, and my way of expressing the feelings of my real life experience through words. So I think the intention is to use words to express feeling.
Yes, it's beautiful. I really
Thank you.
thank you for bringing this to everybody tonight. Thank you. Okay, so Shelley, turn in everyone. Thank you for stepping forward to the mic.
Thank
And
you.
I think it's time for our next poet, a guest here of John, and that would be Doc Janning. Did you have any words to introduction to say to about Doc, or should we let him introduce himself?
Well, Doc is the current Poet Laureate of South Euclid, Ohio. He's a retired podiatrist. He, of all the poets I know, his page on Facebook probably has the most followers. I think like tens of thousands. And he's just a swell guy, and Doc Janning.
Okay, Doc,
Thank
take it
you.
away.
Well, first of all, I am the inaugural Poet Laureate of South Euclid. There hadn't been one prior to my appointment in October of 2018. And I am a retired podiatrist, and actually, I wrote my first poem about the year I graduated from high school, which was 1960, and I graduated from Shaw High in East Cleveland. I only wrote a poem here and a poem there through the years for about 50 years. And in all that time, I may have written 40, maybe 50 poems. But at the end of June 2012, I had a quad bypass. I died on the table. They brought me back, and it was as though a switch had been thrown, and the poetry has flowed ever since.
Whoa. So, you talked a little bit about starting off in high school, writing poetry. What are some of the other things that maybe you read or influenced you when you were young to write, actually? Yes.
I was and always have been an omnivorous reader. Anything you put in front of me, I would read. It was actually a form of escape for me when I was very young, because I was badly abused as a small child. So reading and going to the library, I was allowed to do without any kind of adverse reaction from she who bore me.
Wow. I'm sorry, I'm a bit overwhelmed right now. I'm a bit overwhelmed, Doc, by your story. But thank you for sharing these things with us. So why poetry, and what made you choose that kind of as a medium? And I know there was a long pause in the middle, but what was it about poetry that drew you to it?
I don't really know. It was as though when I was brought back, I was reborn as a poet. And I just started reading all sorts of poetry and then began writing.
It's a whole new chapter then, yes, for you.
Yes.
I can imagine. So how did you fall in with all these folks?
Well, I went to my first poetry open mic at a small coffee shop here in South Euclid. It has since relocated down into the city of Cleveland. And one by one, I heard about other open mics and attending them. And then one at a time, I met all these other folks. And when the pandemic began and Zoom became the thing, then my horizons expanded exponentially.
Because you can reach people anywhere.
I say I have a poetry family which reaches around the world.
Mm-hmm. It's weird how the pandemic seemed really isolating, but I think Zoom and a lot of things have expanded a lot of people's worlds, including my own. So I get that, yes.
Yeah, very much so. And in fact, this week I'll be reading at open mics in England and Ireland. I just earlier today I read at a joint poetry open mic that's run from Paris and New Brunswick, Canada.
Wow. I am familiar with New Brunswick. My brother used to live there, so it's a great place.
And last night I was at an open mic in El Paso.
Okay. Just going around the world, one
Yep.
poetry reading at a time, because it doesn't really matter where you are sometimes.
Yes.
It can matter what time of day it is sometimes, but
Well, the wee hours of the morning for me are a bit difficult. I am 78 years old.
but yeah, sometimes it's, if you're way over in Eastern Europe or something, it's hard to keep up, or Australia even. That's really hard.
Australia is a bit difficult. So is Delhi, India.
Oh yeah. Completely other side of the world. Yes.
Yes.
So, Doc, if you brought something with you to read tonight to share with us?
I always have something up and on the screen ready to read.
Okay. Well, we're ready for you. Tell us a bit about it and then go forth.
Okay, this is one of my, I guess you could call it esoteric pieces of poetry or cosmic poetry. Samsara. Across an age-old galaxy, across an impossible universe, a star sun rises in an improbable sky of a living world, a world of now, changed by time, as time changes all in its infinite alchemy of granite-etched life. Rotating on its axis, revolving around its star in unique moments, moments of motion in galaxies, universes, dimensions, all journey from arcane seas of past through vastness of present and cryptic oceans of future and silent, untold mysteries. The world's skin rumbles and rises, cracks and crumbles, stretching peaks, yawning canyons in its life of moments amid vagaries of time. Ancient rhythms and rituals steeped in Chthonian dark of spaces between play their roles in samsara of the world, cycling and recycling to birth and death of stars and stardust, a world enmeshed in the fabric of time.
Whoa. Hence the background today, I guess.
Well, I read other poetry to this background as well.
Yes, but very appropriate. So yes, thank you very much, Doc. Just want to know if you had any parting words or advice to anybody who's wants to get into the world of poetry. Do you have any advice for people?
Yes, read others' work and listen in on poetry events. Listen carefully. And one thing that I have done for quite a long time since I started writing poetry, 9 years, is I keep a list of words and phrases which pique my interest. I keep it on the computer, and it's now about 100 pages long. And when I'm at a loss for something, I'll go to that list and I'll go through it and I'll say, okay, I can plug that in. I can plug this in.
Because certain words and phrases just tickle your brain, don't they? It's like, I like the way that felt. Maybe there's more of that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I always keep a thesaurus handy.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you very much again for joining us tonight, Doc. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I guess at this point, I could open up the discussion to anybody who has questions for any of our guests tonight. So if you'd like to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Yes, John, I have a question. This is Tim Richards out in Olmsted. So,
Hi, Tim.
Hi. In what year did Ray McNeese discover you?
That was May 2008 during the Hessler Street Fair.
Well, if you
It hasn't been that
recall,
long.
it's because of it's because of you that I'm writing and reading poetry publicly, because I met you in Euclid at the Shore Junior High School in that building. That was the first time I went to an open mic, and you were there. And I'll never forget the poem that you wrote about your wife who had passed, and I was impressed. And so I thought, if you can do it, then doggone it, and I'll start writing and start performing. So thank you, John, for being who you are.
Thank you, Tim. That means a lot to me, really.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions from any of our audience? Comments, advice, astrology readings, anybody?
John, I would be curious to know what's coming up. Are you working on something? Give us
Hi,
the scoop.
Carrie.
Hi.
That's Carrie is our Ohio Poet Laureate, chosen by the governor. So she's awesome.
Respect.
Well, thank you for that question, Carrie. My next reading is going to be September 9th at Loganberry Books in Cleveland Heights. My first live in-person reading since March of 2020. And I'll be reading for your event on Zoom coming up. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it's on my website, crisischronicles.com. I'm also working on a book, which is, it's titled Caution to the Wind. And it's a series of letters written to the wind, which I will reveal is actually my younger self. Things I should have known or paid heed to or whatever when I was younger, lessons I wish I had known, when I was younger. So that's what I'm working on now. And hopefully by next year, I'll have it done.
Thanks. Actually, when you mention written letters to the wind, I keep thinking of that Trog song. It's written on the wind, and everywhere I go, love is all around you. Come on, let it show. Anyway,
Yes.
an aside. Any other questions or comments or just shout outs? Going once?
And John will be reading with me at South Euclid's Bexley Bash a week from Thursday.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me.
No,
I don't have my
is that
calendar in
outside?
front of me.
Yes, it is outside.
Okay.
It's a yearly event in South Euclid. Well, except for last year, of course.
Okay.
Doc, would you repeat what you just said about the event?
It's a South Euclid city event. It's called the Bexley Bash. And anyone who lives in South Euclid or works in South Euclid is invited to come forth and read. It's next week, Thursday. The entire event runs from 4 to about 8, and the poetry open mic portion starts at 6.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. Well, I live in Massachusetts, and I had the privilege of seeing John Burroughs get his award in Connecticut because I happened to just go down there because I knew a lot of people that were going. So that was pretty exciting. The first time I heard him, and I was quite impressed.
Well, thank you for joining us from Massachusetts then. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Mhm.
And I met
Thank
Doc
you.
Janning and Sarah Minges on Zooms.
Mhm.
We Zoom on a Colorado zoetry program that's twice a month. So Doc is right. You meet all kinds of people from everywhere, and you're going on enough Zooms.
Yes. All right. And anybody else want something to say or just
I just
represent?
want to, I just want to say it was great to hear all three of you, my friends, perform. I feel like things are turning around, and it was great to hear you, John. I'm excited for all the things you have going on. And Doc and Shelley, keep us posted if you have anything else going on as well that hasn't been mentioned. Hopefully I will see you soon in Cleveland, in South Euclid.
Yes, thank you very much for that comment, and good luck in your new tenure in Nashville, because I understand you just moved there. So good. People from all over. I think there's a certain optimism that maybe things are going to get better, coupled with oh no, they're bringing masks back here and there. In fact, they just canceled a community event in Avon Lake, the big trucks where all the kids meet the fire trucks and stuff. This year it was going to be on, and then 2 hours ago, canceled. So that's really sad. And I wonder what's next to be canceled. I don't want to think about it. I want to hope that things are going to keep going forward. But I think that the poetry that you guys have brought to us, and also just the experience that goes into us, give us a lot of hope, even when things are looking very bleak. Your stories and your works have really been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people, and they will when this recording gets posted. So thank you again, John and Doc, and we're Shelley, there she is. I didn't see her there for a second, but all of you, thanks for joining us, and everybody else tonight. I want to mention that next week's guest is actually here in the audience as well, and that would be Monica Babcock, who writes poetry and fiction and is working on a number of other things. So if you want to tune in next Tuesday, same time, same channel, same link, she'll be here, and we can have a nice discussion then. So with that, feel free to say your last words, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, thank you so much for Jerry for hosting us, and thank you all for coming. It's really good to see all of you. Some of you I haven't seen in like 2 years, so it's like wow, a blessing to have you here and to be. Yeah, I guess that's it.
It's been a great night. Okay, I'm Jerry Vogel. This has been Read Write Local Unbound on Zoom, and thank you everybody for joining us. We're back for one more next Tuesday with Monica. So have a good night, everybody.